I normally go ladies first. Sarah, forgive me, but I'm going to bring in my friend, good D. Scott Smith, who's ready to roll. And Scott was thinking I have 2 or 3 or 4 people before I come in, but Scott, since this all kind
I
of
got
came out of the
coffee.
experience, the topic, I thought that I would bring you in first, get
Thank
a
you.
little insight from you on what we were talking about, and then we'll start bringing everybody else in.
Yeah, we're talking about management and leadership and what the differences are. And one of the things that I shared was my view that management is very clearly defined, but leadership, generally we just teach it by example, but it's really hard to nail down what it is. In fact, the talk that I gave, and I put it in the comments, was said that management is prose and leadership is poetry. So there's a quick example.
There you go. Well, that is so great. Well, listen, for the half of a person that doesn't know you here, give everybody just a minute snapshot on who is D. Scott Smith and what
Yeah,
does D stand for?
debonair. So I it's I can always tell when people find my name on a official document, because they're like, wow, it's been really nice to get to know you, Dennis. So anyway, there you go. Uh, so I'm involved working with different businesses, generally those that have 20 or fewer employees, and they need a chief of staff, somebody to be that confidant, the advisor, oversee different aspects of the work, look at different components of their business, and really be that trusted advisor.
Well, you are an amazing individual and such a good friend, but we're going to keep going and bring other friends in. Okay, you ready? Here comes Sarah. She is because we normally go ladies first. So here comes Sarah. Woohoo!
Hi, thank you so much for having me again.
You are so welcome. Well, we
Yeah.
had such an amazing conversation on the experience. So, Sarah, for those people in our audience tonight that don't know who you are, give everybody a snapshot. Who is Sarah?
Yes, so I come from a background of design, and I really focused all of my 15 plus years in human centered design principles. But along the way, I realized that those same fundamental principles that helped me make really impactful designs that speak to users are exactly the same foundation that I was using in my management and teaching new managers. So I started my own business, Lux Leadership Coaching, and I'm trying to see, how many more people I can help, new managers or leaders or managers who aren't feeling like they're connecting to their team or their reports. Very, very excited and interested in expanding my reach to help those people and give them structure that will allow them to be less intimidated, but have something that's customizable but repeatable, that will serve them for the rest of their management career.
Well, I love that. Well, first of all, whoa, there we are. We're all big. First of all, let me say, as I flip the screen around, it's interesting. I love that repeatable, that people something that people really can grab onto, and
Yeah.
it as far as having structure. I am one of the most unstructured people ever, and I have had to become intentionally structured.
Mhm.
I had a person a while back. I was laughing hysterically because they said to me, "You're super structured. You're like kind of type A personality, right?" And they obviously only knew me a little bit from management because I said I'm furthest thing from that. But sometimes we have to learn to overcome our
Yeah.
weaknesses by becoming a little more structured, and that's how you get things done. So, all right, we're going to talk more about that. But next, before he goes out again, Mr. Bob Feathers is in the house. Hey, Bob.
Hey.
It's not in the house; he's in the bus station. Well,
And
train station.
he's
Sorry,
muted in
upgrade.
the train station. There you go. That's a new song.
There we
Muted
go.
in the
Muted
train
in the
station.
train
There you go.
station.
Okay. Hey, Bob. How's it going?
Hi. Good. I hope. I'm trying to watch you on my phone because I can't see you on StreamYard, but I can hear you fine. And now I can see myself, so I know I'm kind of here. Can you
There
guys
you
hear me
go.
okay?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
You are definitely kind of here. So,
Okay. Kind of here.
Bob, now while you're kind of here, tell everybody who you kind of are. Oh, there you go. He was kind of here and then he was gone. Okay. Mr. Dave Chrysler is in the house. Hey, Dave.
Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Hey, it is so great to have you, Dave. And you are, first of all, you are my link to loving manufacturing, if I can say the right word.
I was gonna say
Um,
you gotta get it out first.
I
Russ.
know it. I was tongue tied there. It's really hard when I'm speechless. There's something seriously wrong. So anyway, so Dave, give everybody a snapshot. Who is Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Russ. So my name's Dave Chrysler. I own a operations consulting business where we are working with P&L leaders to help them with their operational efficiency. So things like process improvement, continuous improvement initiatives, lean manufacturing, all of those good things that keep your business running like a well-oiled machine and keep cash dropping to the bottom line, which is what we always like to do. So,
Yeah, cash dropping to the bottom line is always a good thing. People like that. It's true that it's not about the money, it's about your passion and your purpose, but the money definitely helps to keep moving along. So, speaking of money, oh wait, I was going to bring Bob in and he just disappeared again. Bob, we're going to get you back one of these days, really, cuz he's kind of there but he's kind of not there. So, all right. Bob, when you're there, we're going to bring you back in. So,
It's like
Gary
some
disappeared
science
again.
fiction guy just kind of
It is.
coming in and out of different dimensions.
He's kind of coming and going. I mean,
He's a
that's
very complicated person.
it's the tough part about being in a train station in Boston, I guess, huh?
yep.
So, yeah, anyway, he's saying StreamYards hates me. Sorry, folks. Oh. Okay, well, listen, Sarah, we're going to bounce back to you real quick. You had some really great insight on the differences and maybe even similarities, but the whole discussion of leadership versus management. That's all I'm going to say. Take it away.
Oh, you're asking a lot for me to remember what I rambled on about last week. No, I think kind of where we landed, I was making a point that at least from my perspective, leadership is something that any role in an organization can take on. It's not something that you have to have in a title. It's not something that you have to have, you know, given to you to be able to do that. And I know Bob and I have talked about that before. But whereas management really is that official title, and I think it does come with an elevated responsibility that is very easily intimidating to new managers because you are responsible for the success and the failures of other individuals. And even if you just want to look at the positive side, you're responsible for that person's growth and development and engagement, retention. And to be successful in that, you can't, I don't think, you can't treat it as a robotic process because the person across you is not a robot.
Well, that's for sure. And Dave, you're nodding. Just pick that up. You're next.
Well, I mean, it's easy to agree with. You're talking to a guy that's come from a lot of leadership and management roles, and I like how you kind of unpack that, Sarah. I agree with you from the standpoint of anybody in any type of position can certainly exude leadership qualities and kind of set the tone, lead by example. We hear those types of kind of phrases often. And I think that typically people compartmentalize the management role in exactly what Sarah said. You've got this level of responsibility. It is generally a title that is associated with that. You generally have people that are reporting to you. And so there's an expectation. And, in my experience and kind of the way that I tell a bit of my background story, I grew up in a family-owned business, multiple family-run businesses. And so, those businesses were second generation. They were started in the 70s and 80s. So it's kind of what I lovingly consider or put as the old school approach to management and leadership. And so, being a young person and kind of coming into those leadership roles, having responsibility for other people. I obviously brought the things that I learned into those roles, especially early on. And for me, it was kind of, the need there was to grow into more of a leadership role. And for me, the big differentiator was I not only had to be a really effective communicator and hold people to certain standards and be able to communicate what those were and have the management piece, but I also had to become a really good storyteller. I had to be able to share what the vision of what we were trying to do, and the kind of higher my level went in terms of responsibility, the more I had to do from that kind of storytelling and visionary standpoint. So that for me is another piece of the differentiator between leadership and manager. You have to be a good storyteller. You have to get people on your side. You have to listen to people, to their ideas, to their input, all of those things. So I'll pause there so I don't keep talking.
No, we like when you keep talking. It's all good. It's all good. Well, listen, one thing that we talked about last time that I brought up is, it's important to realize that everybody is a leader at some point, because we all are leading by example. And just like Bob said in the comments, leadership is action. We are taking action and we're leading by example. And Scott, I'm going to bounce to you on this one because, I think that one thing that Sarah said, and Scott, you can comment on this, and that is every leader is not a manager and every manager is not really a leader. They don't always go together. Scott?
Well, it's both of them are skill sets. Then there's so I put the link to the video that I put, the Ignite video on management and leadership. Both of them are skills. Both of them, and the question was, do you need management or leadership? And the answer is always both. You need to do both, right? So management, clearly defined: plan, organize, lead, and control. So plan, figure out what the heck you want to get done. Organize, gather all the right resources and people. Lead, this is a supervisory sense so that people know when and where to be and they have those tools. And control, measure, are you achieving what you hope to do? So that's all management is, and that's just a skill set. We check those things off. And then we go to leadership. In leadership, and this goes back to both Sarah and Dave, what you were talking about. When I was the interim general manager for an upholstered furniture company, we had a 170,000 square foot facility with 150 employees. And I'd bring people into that front office, and we'd talk and show them some stuff. And I'd take them up on this deck where we had samples of the product, but then we could look out over the whole factory. And I'd tell them, we got 150 families that I'm responsible for, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. So when you're going to lead the people, and Dave, this goes back to the storytelling side of it. The first tenet there is communicate vision. And when you communicate vision, you're reaching out into the future and grabbing a hold of a piece of that and bringing it in and going, this is what it's going to be like. And that's why you're doing what you're doing. And people know where they fit, right? They know how they are moving everyone forward. And then the second tenet is build trust. And this isn't trust between the leader and the follower. This is the trust between all of the people working together, so that Dave, Sarah, and I know that Sarah is going to do her part. I don't need to overplay and do her responsibility. And the same thing for Dave. Dave knows that I'll do my part and he doesn't need to jump in. We trust each other to do what's important. Inspire greatness, that is truly just the coaching side of it and getting people to do things that they didn't think they could do, because we have so much potential that we will surprise ourselves. And then that final step, that report card, is move others to action. So you can say all these great things and people walk out and they go, wow, Sarah is so inspiring. But if they don't do anything different, she's a motivational speaker, not a leader.
Right. No, exactly. Well, and I think that one thing about that, Scott, too, is that, it it's just the action piece that I keep thinking about. And Bob was he brought a point up that I was reading that says is bringing the things together. Like you said, both, right? You need both of them. And it's bringing those things together so that you have somebody, especially those that are managing people, really in that leadership role, which sometimes is hard for people, right, Sarah?
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think, unfortunately, so many people go and exude leadership skills and show leadership skills, especially, maybe early in their career, and it gets people's attention. And I think that can get mistaken, or assume that that person can just go from successfully doing what they're doing with leadership, and then you slap a management title on them. But if you don't support them and give them the right tools and framework to make that transition, one or both of the areas are going to suffer drastically. You're either going to lose one of your best leaders because they're so overconsumed with management responsibilities and worrying about that and trying to be perfect. And I've seen so many beginning managers almost put on this facade of what they think a manager is, and they try to pretend and fit into that. And there goes your brilliant leader who was inspiring people to action. Now they're like a shell of what they were. And what I think, at least for me, ideally you want both. Like you said, you want a leader and a manager together. But I think, like I said, so many people get yanked out of one and thrust into the other without the support or guidance,
Right.
and then you just lost something really beautiful.
Right. The tools and the things they need to actually accomplish what they need to accomplish. And Dave, what do you think about the fact there's people that say, listen, I don't want to manage and I'm not really a leader. Well, I would say to them, well, you are a leader because there's people around you watching you all day long on how you're doing your job. And so whether you really want to be a leader or not, to some people somewhere around you, you are that leader, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of leadership by default in some cases, and I've seen it both ways, right? We often, especially in this conversation, are kind of focusing on the positivity that often kind of follows from that leadership, but it can go the other way too, right? And that to me, I think is an important topic because sometimes people shy away from kind of the negative side of it. And what I really mean by that is, everybody has come across somebody who maybe isn't their ideal person in a particular work center or department. And so that negativity can be a a leadership characteristics as well. And so, it does go both ways. And I think, back to the part in terms of maybe not wanting to move from a leadership role or recognizing themselves as a leader, or, wanting to move from that leadership role into a more of a management role. A lot of that I think goes back to what Sarah said, and that is giving people the appropriate tools and support. It's interesting because I saw this comment a few weeks ago and I had to file it because it was just so perfect. And the comment was really around kind of the stuff that I do on a day-to-day basis and talking through continuous improvement, lean manufacturing, like the principles there, right? And you guys are all familiar with those things. And the comment was really about, we say as kind of professionals within those skill sets that often there aren't anything such as people problems, right? Most things are system problems, process problems, those types of things. But yet at the same time, many of us like to blame kind of leadership or management in terms of being the roadblock for why progress isn't being made. And so I thought it was really interesting comment because, again, it gets back to what we're talking about. And my perspective is always, and again, it's because I lived this life for so many years. So it's that firsthand experience. But, when when you don't give folks that you're trying to get into a leadership and management position, when you don't give them access to the tools and support, and give them a bit of a roadmap, and obviously letting them make mistakes and all of those things along the way, that's really where, kind of that stagnation happens. You can have a lot of undue turnover, those types of things. There's a lot of things that we don't like to see throughout organizations happen in those scenarios.
Right.
So yeah, again, I'll kind of pause there and circle back to the group. But
Well, I want to jump back to something you first said, Dave, and that is, you can lead from a negative position, right? People, the way they speak, the way they talk. I just want to, being a man of faith, I can go back to scripture that says we can lift people up or tear them down, right? Is it good to lift people up and make them feel better and work with them, collaborate, and everybody have a feeling that we're going in the same direction? Is that a good thing and to be positive? Or is it better to tear people down, show them how nasty they are so I can feel better, right? How terrible they are because I'm a better person. Well, people that say that clearly are suffering from insecurity to begin with, but we really got to think about that because that happens in business all the time, right, Sarah? People are coming from a negative position because they're trying to make themselves look better, but it really doesn't do that for them, does it?
It doesn't, unless the worst case scenario is you could have an entire company, all levels thinking that way, and yeah, maybe you'd get ahead in that type of situation. But do you really want to? I wouldn't. Um, but it's amazing the impact that managers have on their direct reports. And again, I think that goes back to why it's so intimidating. I read an article a little bit ago. I want to say it was by Forbes, but it was talking about, I want to say it was about saying like about 63% of the people polled said that their managers had more of an impact of their mental health than their significant others or any other category. That's a heavy weight. That's a heavy weight to put on a manager. And if you don't help managers be the best that they can, and I love what you said, Dave, allow them space to fail in a way that isn't going to be catastrophic.
Mhm.
Give them those tools, give them that space. Otherwise, you will end up with that toxic leader who's just like, why do I even care? Nothing's worth pursuing, or
Right.
I'm sure we've all worked in and around somebody like that, like you said. And it's just, man, it sucks you just dry of any will to enjoy your job.
Right. And that's not the kind of leadership that we want, right, Scott? I mean, if you have managers that are leading people from that thing, it really pulls everybody down. And
Mhm.
I think that that's where it becomes so critical for people to think about, where are they coming from? How are they dealing with people as people through this process?
Yeah, this is one of those fallacies that we believe that we can build job security by making ourselves indispensable, right? And nobody is indispensable. We can all be replaced. And as the manager and taking on the leadership aspects of management, you win when the team does good and you give credit to the team. The team did great. We succeeded. We were under budget. We were ahead of schedule. We did all these great things. It was my team that came together and did that. And if you're over budget and the project isn't complete and things fell apart, and that's when you step in and you say, I did a bad job. Right. I mean, this is part of how it works. And and I love this too. Sarah and Dave, you're both talking about this. The quote I often use is we develop leaders by creating opportunities where failure is an option. So if you want to teach someone to negotiate third-party contracts, then put them in charge of the janitorial supplies to begin with, right? So if the load of toilet paper doesn't show up, that's all right, right? But if a critical line down component doesn't show up, because you put them in charge of that right out of the gate, you could lose the business. So
Right.
here in that case, is not an option. Toilet paper, who cares?
Yeah, we definitely don't want doctors doing surgery on us that might make those mistakes. That would not be good. Um, but I was thinking what you were saying there, Scott, about allowing people space to fail, people to grow. When you're in an environment, and Bob said it here a while back in the comments, when you're creating a good culture and a good
Yes.
environment, and you're leading people by a positive example, people want to work. They want to do things for you, right, Dave? They want to be better at the job and for the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of one of the things that I always give a half smirk about when I'm in conversations with with leadership folks and business owners, uh, likewise, because you hear things, right? Oh, the young people today have no work ethic, right? Well, I mean, sure, I'm sure there are some out there who don't have a work ethic, just like there are some older folks out there that don't have a work ethic, right? So you hear these types of blanket statements, and it's that has not really changed over the course of time. And it's interesting to me because when you walk into an organization that has developed that type of culture, that has visionary leaders that communicate very clearly, that back to what Scott, you said, that tie kind of the vision to what happens on a day-to-day basis, and people feel that from an individual perspective. That's another component of that. When all of that is happening and that culture is just clicking, right? That's what attracts and retains top talent. Okay. So if you're struggling and to retain your really great people, if you're struggling to attract new people, those are the first places that I start to look. I start asking questions, show me some of your process documentation. Oh, well, we have it here. We have it. Well, when's the last time it was updated? When's the last time you, started to engage people and truly listen to the things that are slowing them down, not just your perception of the things that are slowing them down, because, oh, by the way, it's probably been, at the very least a couple of months, but more than likely a few years since you've been directly responsible for, that particular process, that particular operation. So to me, there's a very clear difference when you walk into an organization, you start to have these types of conversations, and it's pretty easy to compartmentalize, the folks that are saying things that, well, nobody out here wants to work. We're always making these types of mistakes. These people aren't doing XYZ. It's very easy to pick up on language like that, and conversely, the positive people that are using we type language, it's my mistake as the owner, it's my mistake as the leader, those types of things. So for me, that's the big difference, right? When you have that positive culture, when you're doing these things the right way, chances are business is crazy, business is booming. Even in downed economies, you don't struggle hiring and retaining amazing people. So yeah, people are attracted to those types of things, and they repel, like we have seen coming out of COVID with the whole remote work push, all of that, right? To me, a lot of that is more so on the culture aspect and the leadership aspect than any other component of it. So
Yeah, and I like what you said. When you are creating that positive culture, and you are listening to your team, right? And they feel like they're part of the team, they're immediately going to be more productive and more positive about their job, right, Sarah?
Yeah, they are. Individualization, I think, is such a crucial aspect in management. And, for a lot of people, it's a very hard thing to do because you want to have a process for management. And a lot of people then want to do the same thing for every individual, and you just can't do that. Um, you have to spend the time, set the foundation, learn what that person needs and wants. When we had our last session last week, I used the example of I've had people that I've managed that, I asked them, how do you want to receive praise? because some people want you to scream it in front of the whole team and show everybody how amazing they are. And I've had other people who, if I did that, they would be mortified and would shut down and just stop. Like they move, it makes their skin crawl. So you really have to spend the time and understand, what does each individual need to succeed, and what do they need to all of your points, what do they need to be able to see themselves in that vision? I think management and leadership, we all can spend a lot of time in that vision and creating that vision, and oh, it's so good, look at this vision. And you forget how you have to use storytelling, like you said, Dave, bring people along on the journey that you spent the last 6 months or whatever it was as a leadership team coming up with this vision. Bring them along, catch them up, show the big pretty vision, but then go right back to them in an individual way and help them understand their connection to that vision.
Well, yeah. No, I was just going to say that what you just said is brilliant. Show them their connection to the vision, right?
Yep.
Or allow them to see their connection to the vision, right?
Yep.
Because when people are part of what's going on, it's just, you got the C-suite up here making all the decisions, and the people down on the manufacturing floor are saying this is a bunch of garbage. It doesn't work. And they want us to do this way. It's never going to happen because they have no idea what's happening down here. And unless they get down on the floor and on their knees and listen to people that are working at it, it's not going to happen. Right, Scott?
Yeah. And I love the comments, and Bob's brought this up too, about culture. And that was Peter Drucker, management guru, famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's the beginning of the day. That's the most important meal of the day, by the way. So here's the deal. I go into a chain drugstore locally here, and every time that I went in there, the people were rude. They didn't greet you. They were very curt, and you watched, and you could tell they were stressed out. They didn't have enough people to do what needed to be done. And I remember coming back and telling my wife that I blame the management, the leadership of that chain, because they've created a cult. They can't hire people because they can't attract people. As Dave said, this is the culture, the habitat. We say it's the habitat, repels the people that they need. And it only attracts the people that can't get a job anywhere else. So they're not able to get. Now, on the other hand, I was talking to a lady who is she's a fixer, and she works for one of the cell phone companies, the big cell phone companies. She goes to different stores, and she builds a culture within that store. And when I was talking to her about the way she worked and what she did, I asked her, I bet you have no problem attracting the best people to come and work for you. She said, no, I have a line of people waiting for an opening to come to my store to work, because she created a culture that values people. And this is a key item. And this is frontline, middle management, senior management, individual contributors, whatever their role is. It's if they don't feel valued, and people in the research will show that people don't quit a company, they leave their manager.
Right. They quit people. Exactly. Well, Dave, we're going to bounce back to you on that one, because you did, we're talking about that culture thing, and what Scott is saying is so true. If people don't see the vision, if they don't feel like they're part of what's going on, and if they are stressed out and the culture is such that they hate their job, what do they do to the customers? If they're in a retail situation, you sit there in the checkout line and they tell you about all the lousy things that the company is doing to them. And you're thinking, that is not good. That's not a good way to attract good customers. So go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, and it happens everywhere, right? Like it happens in B2B scenarios every day. Think about a time that you called, any type of business in your day-to-day life, right? And think about if you really listen to what people say. Have you ever heard somebody on a call say something like, my system's running really slow? We got this new system. They didn't really give us a whole lot of training on this new system. It's slowing us down, right? And you hear all these different types of things. I mean, over the course of time, right? All of those types of decisions, all of those types of communications that happen, and ultimately working back to that culture piece, right? That's what ends up impacting people on the ground level, people throughout leadership. And, it doesn't take very much time or very much kind of turbulence, if you will, to reach a customer. And, I know if I'm calling a place, who would I rather call? A place that I know I'm going to get helped and get serviced and get taken care of, and it's going to be a really simple process? Or am I going to want to call the place that I know I'm going to hear about how, this is a problem and that's a problem. And, I'd like to do this, but we can't, we're not allowed to. They won't let me do these types of things. I unfortunately have been on too many of those calls throughout my life. And, I know who I would rather talk to. I'll share one more kind of quick story because it's again one I'll just never forget. But it was in kind of the early days of COVID, and I was out driving down the street, headed to the office, and I saw this sign on the side of the road, and it caught my eye because it was just one of those things. And the sign said, I actually had to turn around and go back and take a picture. So I still have a picture of this thing in my phone, and I just kind of lovingly go back to it because it's such a perfect reminder of this conversation. And the sign was simply a big, if you can imagine, on the side of a road, a big A-frame type of a sign. And it said, unreliable, need not apply, right? Now hiring. Okay. And to me, it just speaks volumes to, that organization to have the thought process of that this was going to be the thing to really shake some amazing people loose, right? That was the first interaction that we're putting out into the marketplace, that we already have an impression that most people are unreliable. Therefore, if you consider yourself unreliable, don't even come into my establishment, to fill out an application. So I felt like it was a good way to capture a bit of what we're talking about. And again, it's those little things that constantly add up. And to everybody's point, people very much quit people. And just like people buy from people, those relationships are what make things happen positively and negatively. So, it takes a long time to be a great listener and to be that visionary that can communicate different aspects of what a particular role or initiative is. But it's well worth the time to keep practicing and to try to put yourself out there and to learn these things. At least in my experience, it's served me very well. And I was terrible at it in the early days. I guarantee if you found any one of my past teammates, they would wholeheartedly tell you that. So, but thankfully I was able to figure things out and move past that and share some of my bruised knees lessons with other people.
Well, and Caroline said it just a little while back here. If you listen to the people, they will tell you what you want. How many times have we been in places where people say they never listened to me? They just they have no idea, and their whole mindset is what my mindset was when I worked in a fast food place when I was young in college, and every day I was working, I was thinking, how can I quit? How can I quit? How can I quit? I was the entire time I was strategically working on how I could actually quit my job. And if people have that kind of a mindset because the culture is bad, because there's no communication, people don't listen to them, leadership has fallen down, then we have management without leadership. We go back to what Sarah brought up. We have people that are thrown into positions and they do not have the tools or capabilities to do that job. Right, Sarah?
Yeah, and it's really incredible how much power simple phrases, as long as you mean them, really have. And, I've worked with enough different leaders, all at different levels. One thing that I do see pretty true with most people in management or leaders is, like you said about that other individual, about the store, they're fixers. So a lot of us, we see problems and we want to fix them. And what I see happening a lot is, even if they are listening, they don't acknowledge that they're listening. And so I think that has as much impact, if not more, to listen and say, I hear you. That makes sense. I didn't think about it that way. I really appreciate your perspective, and I want you to keep bringing things like this up. That you have just made that person stay. You have planted another seed of empowerment and growth in that individual so that they will come back and go, hey, I saw this. And you've turned that person that maybe their first time bringing a problem up, they were just saying, hey, here's a problem. Can you please fix it? Maybe the next time they'll be like, hey, here's a problem. I thought maybe we could do this or that to solve it. And it's those tiny little steps that, if you just take the time as a leader and as a manager to not just listen to complaints and fix them, but engage with them and go, oh wow, like that's a really smart idea. I really appreciate that. It has so much power. It's incredible.
Well, I've got to jump on that because I love what you said. It's an amazing point, Sarah. And that is, if you compliment somebody and you repeat back to them and you give value to what they said to you, they know you're listening. You're not a good listener. And I have done this, by the way. So I'm not pointing the finger at other people. When you are so busy listening to answer instead of listening to actually add value and be part of the conversation, everybody knows. Sarah, you're saying that to me, and I'm saying, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you know what I did? I went and I did this. Okay, so
Right.
I hear what you're saying. I've got it. I know what you're saying, but you know what I did, and then you're thinking, okay, they could care less about what I'm saying, right, Scott?
Yeah, I think everyone should be a motivational listener, personally.
Me too.
Nice plug.
And this is, again, this is jumping right to a solution. This is something that I recommend for every leader, every manager at every level, that you have regular one-on-one meetings with every one of your direct reports. And it could be weekly, monthly, quarter. It needs to be often enough. And the length of the time needs to be sufficient. So there you go, for the formula. But the deal is that you need to put it on a calendar. You need to meet with them, and it needs to be a pull of information from your employee. This is not your opportunity to push information and direct them, right? So if I report to Dave, and Dave, we get together, and if Dave, he pulls out a notebook, and this is what I did. I had a notebook for every employee. Dave pulls out a notebook and he said, oh, okay, Scott, last time you said, here's what was going on, and here's some things that were in your way. Here's some things that were going good. What else is going on, right? So he's pulling from me, and I'm going, well, I've got this project and I've got these things, and well, I'm having some hard time with this person, or I'm this bit of information, whatever it is, right? And Dave's just writing it down. Okay, great. What do you think I can do to help, or what would make it better for you, right? Take notes. Next time we get together, all right, here's the things, Scott, right? And it's all a pull of information out of me to Dave, to my leader, to my manager. And here's the deal. If we meet, we're out there on the work floor, and Dave and I are talking, and we've covered everything. And then it comes time for our weekly scheduled meeting. And we go like, well, I think we pretty much cover everything. I'm not going to meet with Dave. When it comes to the 360 review time, I'm going to say Dave never listens to me. Because if it's not on the calendar and that appointment kept, it never happened.
Well, that is a great point, as always, Scott. You know, this is one thing that I have learned by listening to Scott. This is how I learn half of the things that I do. I just sit back and listen to Scott because he's full of so much wisdom. And you know, today, listen, you know, from all of you, Sarah, we've known each other the shortest amount of time of everybody here, but I listen and I learn so much, and I gain so much value from each one of you about what you're talking about. You know, as we've talked about culture, we've talked about listening and adding value to people. We've talked about leading people, and that's the best way to manage people is lead them the direction and they will follow you. And then making sure and following up and taking action. Bob has said earlier that leadership is action. When people see you taking action on the things that they brought up or the points that they said, they're thinking this person really listens to me. They really care and they want to work for you or with you or be part of the organization. And I think those things are so critical. So, in wrapping up things, and I'm going to let each of you give your gold nugget and how to get in touch with you. We're going to start with Sarah. But before, Sarah, you go, I was just going to say this whole conversation about leadership versus management or leadership and management. Just remember the things we talked about today, that everybody is a leader, that if you're in a place of management and influence over people, you need to listen, add value, and really lead by example. And you need to grow with your people because you're not perfect. We're all not perfect in what we're doing. And when we learn, everybody gets better. And I think it's Craig Groeschel that says, when the leader gets better, everybody wins. And if you guys have not listened to Craig Groeschel, he's an amazing, not only pastor, but leadership expert. He hangs out with people like John Maxwell, got a pretty good crowd going there. And I love that. Every show, every podcast he does, he says, when the leader gets better, everybody wins. And we're going to start with you, Sarah. Let's give your gold nuggets, and then how do people get in touch with you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this was a really wonderful discussion, and yeah, I could talk all day about it. But for me, what I find is most important, I think it can be exciting to talk about, you know, the upper levels of, you know, how do you story tell your vision and, you know, these tactics of leadership. And I think what gets glanced over a lot is how do you start the proper foundation with your team members, with your manager, with your direct reports. And what I've found through, you know, my almost 8 years of management is actually my background in human centered design showed me those fundamentals. Because when it all comes down to it, it's really between two people trying to work together, whatever relationship that they have. And there are very predictable ways that humans behave and react, that they want validation, that they need this. And, you know, it's just really incredible what, you know, the right kind of questions and the right kind of conversations, if you put in that work at the beginning, it will just pay dividends for the rest of your relationship with that person. And that's what I really focus on with Lux Leadership Coaching, is taking those human-centered principles and applying them in a way that is easy for anyone to do. There was an individual early in the show who was asking, well, what do you do when you don't feel connected to your manager? You can do this to them. It goes both ways. So if people are interested in learning more about human-centered leadership, I would absolutely love to talk to anybody. You can go to luxleadershipcoaching.com, LUX Leadership Coaching. There's a Calendly on there that you can book some time with me. We have some one-on-one and see if, you know, some sessions or how I could help you in your, you know, advancement as a manager, or if you're struggling with a manager. I really love to help people in those situations.
Well, and you know what I really like about you, Sarah, is that you, even in our conversation here, you're very attentive, you're paying attention, you're leading by example as you're teaching people about leadership. That draws people to you, And I want to thank you so much for today. And Dave, you're up next.
I'm up next with my golden nugget.
You got it.
Okay. All right. So I think one of the things that has come up a couple of times, and I'll take things a bit more tactical because I think Sarah did an amazing job of kind of unpacking from a different aspect. And in my experience, one of the easiest ways to kind of lose people right on your team is really the lack of follow through and follow up. So we've talked about how do we connect with people, how do we build culture, active listening, all of those great things. And unfortunately, I've seen many examples where that communication is happening. There's ideas being shared. And what often happens from the leadership and management perspective is that while you've got all of these balls in the air, you've got all of these priorities that you're managing, you often don't necessarily do a great job of circling back with people on your team and giving them the follow up and the follow through on where are you at? Why are we still waiting for this particular thing, that particular thing? So, that regular communication and just continuing to practice, getting out in front of people, back to what Scott said, getting those meetings scheduled, getting team meetings scheduled, and just overly communicating. I think you can't say it enough. You can't communicate too much in pretty much every scenario that I've ever been a part of. So the only thing I would say in terms of a word of caution from an over communication standpoint is that you want to differentiate leadership from kind of the group leadership model. It's a whole nother conversation for a whole other day, so I won't go into that.
That's next show.
But Russ, thanks for having me on with you guys. This amazing conversation. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me. I'm most active on this platform. You can also find me on our website, which I think somebody has scrolling somewhere. So thanks for the conversation. Always amazing to chat with you guys. I always learn something. So thank you.
You bet. And Mr. D. Scott Smith, you wrapping it up.
All right. So communicate. You can find me at dscottsmith.com. No, the key thing that you said gold nugget. It's just communicate, right? So the deal is, what I found is the most common source of conflict in the office is a misalignment on project management fundamentals, scope, schedule, and resources. Good, faster, cheaper, right? How much do we want to get into? What quality level? When do we need it done, and how much can we spend, or how many people can we put to it? And what happens is we think, well, there's this great story, right, that has been shared around, and it's pick your favorite leader, and they tell this junior person to go do a project, and they come and they bring it and they hand it, and they say, is this the best you can do? And, well, no, I could probably do it. So they leave and they come back. There's like 3 or 4 iterations of it. And pretty soon the person's like, this is as good as it's going to get. And it's like, then why didn't you do that the first time? Well, this is not a great story to tell. This is a great example of misalignment of project management fundamentals. This is like, I thought you wanted it now, but you wanted it better, right? Or I thought you wanted it cheap. I thought you didn't want to spend money on it. And this is the source of office conflict. So project management fundamentals, scope, schedule, and resources, make sure that you communicate and you're aligned on that. Now you can find me at dscottsmith.com. That's D for debonair.
I love it. And I just want to echo the word alignment, because I think alignment comes through communication, and good communication comes through good listening. And I will say this till I'm blue in the face, but Scott and I graduated from Oregon State in 1987, the same day, the same ceremony. And in my 5 years at Oregon State University, yes, I was on the 5-year plan, I had one class on listening and a whole bunch of classes on speaking. And I want to tell you that is really the ratio of life. People are speaking 95% of the time and listening very little. because most people are doing what I said before, and I get caught in that too. Listening to answer, not listening to add value and be part of the conversation. So I want to encourage everybody today. Remember, you are a leader. All of us are. You're leading by example, like Bob said earlier. It's leadership is action, right? And I love what John Maxwell said. I didn't say this earlier, but he says leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. And the way you have influence over people and show them value is by listening and taking action on what they talk about, however that be, whether it's action in the conversation or whatever. So I want to thank all of you for being here today. What a blessing. I'm at russhedge.com. Best way to get a hold of me. We're just going to wrap up the show with all of us on screen again today. I appreciate each one of you. Bob had to leave early, but you know what? We love Bob. He'll be back, and we'll have him again on another show. But until we see you again, which is every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Russ Reels Live, have a great day and a great life. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.